Now, while I absolutely do use the Hero's Journal, actually specifically this Hero's Journal in Mountain Gray, and have used the Hero's Journal in the past to manage my mental health, I've actually used a lot of different journals by a lot of different companies. In fact, these are just the ones I could find that I haven't lost. And so today, I don't just want to talk about the Hero's Journal and ADD, I want to talk about journaling and mental health. There's videos and essays, even peer-reviewed research papers published in psychology journals about journaling and mental health. And it's really interesting why, because while some of them might offer some tips as to a method or style of journaling, it's not one specific style of journaling or journaling a certain thing that seems to provide the benefit. It's journaling as a whole. And that's interesting to me because for all of the ways that we try to solve our problems in the 21st century, we don't often think of a type of technology so old we don't think of it as technology, which is a pen and a piece of paper. Now, I probably don't have to go to a research paper to convince you of the benefits of mental health and journaling. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you've tried journaling before, or at least think that it would help you out. Or today I want to talk about what I think the core benefit of any kind of journaling is. It's actually a paradigm that plays out at the most basic level of all of our favorite stories: chaos versus order. Now, I think all of us know that at a fundamental level, the world is not necessarily a very trustworthy place. I don't just mean that as some weird extrapolation of stranger danger. I just think that we know that there are things out there that could hurt us, or things out there that could negatively impact us, and we don't always know what those things are. Now, we've talked before on this channel about Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, and the principle of negativity dominance. This idea that we hate losing more than we enjoy winning, which makes our brains pay attention to negative information more than positive information. And while it's easy to wonder as to why that is, I actually think the explanation is, in some ways, right in front of us. See, the world is full of unknowns. There are so many things that we don't know or don't understand, in fact, than things that we do understand and can comprehend. So our brain needs to sort through that information, and the things that can hurt us are more important than the things that can help us, because we have to react to those things faster. Now, it's easy to talk about the psychology of that and have it seem like a far out there idea, but I think it plays out in our lives in very obvious ways. How many of us think that if we stopped trying to clean the spaces we live in, that they would progress towards being cleaner? Well, I think probably all of us have experienced not prioritizing cleaning your room, or not picking up the kitchen and seeing one bowl pile up, or seeing the dust start to accumulate, and you realize that over time, if you stop putting effort into putting your space in order, it doesn't tend towards being more in order, it tends towards being more chaotic. See, the tendency of the world to progress towards chaos doesn't just play out in stories. It plays out in physics, in the second law of thermodynamics. The world tends to increase in entropy over time. Or you could go to poetry, to the words of William Butler Yeats when he says, "Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world." Or I could go to the experience of your life. If you've ever tried to accomplish a goal, say getting a little bit more in shape, or starting a business, or some kind of creative endeavor, you know that if you don't sit down and put the time in, your book won't write itself. And I know personally that my proclivity is when I'm not prioritizing my health, my tendency is far less to look down and find myself on a run, and far more to look down and find myself eating a McDouble. See, it's not just the world that is full of uncertainty. I think that if we take a step back and we start to try to objectively analyze ourselves, we realize that we don't necessarily know why we do a lot of the things that we do. We don't know necessarily why we like the things that we like or dislike the things that we don't like. And even if you're the person who knows exactly why you like all the things you like and knows exactly why you do all the things you do, you too have probably experienced telling yourself you would do something that you didn't end up doing. Or the reverse, telling yourself you would never do something and then finding yourself doing the very thing you never wanted to. See, that's often the framework from which I would talk about how ADD can rule my life. See, last night I was writing out my to-do list for the day. I have tasks here at the Hero's Journal. Filming this video was one of them, so thank you for watching that. And then 9:30 a.m. rolls around and I want to make coffee and play guitar and maybe play Borderlands 3 while I'm at it. Where did that come from? Because rational adult brain Zach didn't choose that. See, it's not just that our minds are these ironclad forces of will where we can move through the world in exact certainty. The world is chaotic and our minds are no exception. And whether you experience that cranked up with ADD, or you experience that through the lens of depression and anxiety, or just through the ordinary lens of life in the 21st century without diagnosis, you know what it's like to be ruled by internal forces that feel beyond your control. You know what it's like to face the chaos within your own head. Now, I don't say all this to say that you shouldn't be comfortable in your own skin or trust your own head, but I think it draws the question, if there's so much chaos, not just out in the world, but also within our own selves, what is it that we can do to make the world and ourselves a more trustworthy place? And I think that that's where journaling comes in. See, the reason the world and our own selves can be so untrustworthy, the source of a lot of that tension, is the fact that we often make promises to ourselves that we can't keep. That's the source of a lot of the conflict. We think that, man, I really want to be in shape, and so tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to run a marathon. And then you get up tomorrow and you eat cereal and don't do anything of the kind, and you start to develop this strange relationship with yourself. You start to develop a relationship with yourself where what you say doesn't seem to mean as much as it could. See, journaling doesn't work on your mental health through some magic formula. It doesn't somehow unlock some token or spell that's going to make your brain a better place. What it does is it taps into that rational side of your brain, the part of yourself that can more accurately assess what reasonable progress would look like. See, the reason I bring up all of the chaos, not just in the world, but also within ourselves, is because I want to challenge an assumption. I think most of us think of ourselves as rational. We think of ourselves as being largely in control of everything that we do. And the idea I want to propose is that we start to view ourselves as being rational at times, but primarily irrational. The things that we do are more justified than they are chosen. From our emotions to our likes and our dislikes to the way that we spend our time. I actually think that the sources of most of those decisions are not immediately available to our rational minds. And while that can be a scary thought, I think it's an incredibly profound one that plays into what I think the real benefit of journaling is for mental health, connecting your rational mind to the rest of your life. See, I think a lot of us, myself first and foremost, want to be some kind of Ubermensch, some kind of massive force of willpower who's always in control of everything and is gonna get up tomorrow and run a marathon and start your small business and write your novel all in 3 days because you're gonna be in control for every single one of those seconds. And that's just not how life works. Whatever rational part of your brain exists, the part of your brain that can make those decisions and be in control all the time, seems to only be around for a limited portion of the day. See, I think the reason that we tend to not keep many of our promises to ourselves isn't that we don't try hard enough. It's not some kind of shortcoming on my part or your part. It's because we tend to make unreasonable promises. We don't treat ourselves in a very reasonable manner. See, if you were to look at yourself with real perspective and say you wanted to start a business or go on some kind of creative endeavor or fulfill some kind of dream around your fitness, you would probably begin with small, reasonable change. You would probably encourage yourself along the way. You would probably be okay with minor setbacks or a day off or missing. You would know that the most important thing was to keep going. But how many of us can really say we treat ourselves that way? Because the reverse is usually true. We have these entirely unrealistic expectations of ourselves that we would never expect anybody else to ever fulfill, and yet think that we will because we live in our own heads. See, as somebody who runs marketing for a journaling company, this is something I see in the darker side of the productivity tool market. The kind of hustle culture, if you buy this, then all your dreams will be fulfilled because you'll be able to work 18 hours a day and just push it a little bit further and you'll finally have all these things. And I just don't think it's true. See, in our experience, in my experience with mental health, people don't need another kick in the tail. They don't need somebody to help them feel worse about themselves. They don't need somebody to antagonize them or tell them how they missed today. Usually they need the opposite. They need a hand up in the midst of kind of a chaotic world. And that, I think, drives in on the 5 benefits that I have seen of journaling in my life. The first of which is perspective. See, perspective is so hard to find, especially perspective on ourselves. And one of the ways that journaling helps me manage my mental health is it helps me get better perspective on me. I can encounter myself as if I'm a new person, whether that's reading something I wrote yesterday or a week ago or a month ago or 5 years ago. Every time I've sat down and journaled, I've left a little time capsule or piece of buried treasure, something that lets me re-encounter myself from a more objective perspective. The second thing journaling does for me that very little else does is it gives me structure that I've chosen and am able to self-impose on my life. When I get up this morning or when I sit down to work and my brain is going a million miles an hour and I want to watch TV and play Borderlands and practice guitar all at the same time, I can look in my journal and say, hey, what did rational brain Zach think was a good idea for me to do right now? There's even a meta level where the physical product, the Heroes Journal, helps me stay on track with the work I need to do for the company, the Heroes Journal. So that even if my rational brain isn't working that well, I can consult my rational brain in the form of my to-do list and the things that I set out for myself. Because if Zach yesterday thought it was a good idea for me to film this video today, then I should probably do it, even if it doesn't make as much sense to me right now in this moment. The third thing that the Heroes Journal helps me with is accountability. And that can be a big, scary word, but I don't mean accountability to some kind of external force. I mean accountability to my rational self. It's not something I am actually able to do every day. It's something I aspire to do every day, but I love the calendar section of the Heroes Journal. While I actually use a Google Calendar to keep track of my meetings and the things that I need to do in the future, I love using the calendar to remember what I've done in the past. Hold myself accountable for the thing that I can never replace no matter how hard I work, my time. The fourth thing that the Heroes Journal helps me with is balance. For me, filling out my journal is a ritual. In an ideal world, I get up, I make my bed, I get my first cup of coffee, and I sit down and I write in my Heroes Journal, but that doesn't always happen. And in fact, I would say the days that I'm most proud of my use of the Heroes Journal aren't the days where I did that. It's the days where I did it at 11:45 p.m., right before going to bed, at the end of a day that kicked my butt. Because what I'm doing is I'm putting rational adult brain Zach back in charge. Even if it's just for a few minutes of my day, I found that that's enough. That's enough for me to feel as if I've conquered some part of the day, even if the rest of the day conquered me. And finally, and maybe the most important thing my journal does for me is it is proof. See, there are all sorts of days when I don't feel like I'm very good at my job. There are all sorts of days where I don't feel like I'm that successful of a human or I'm very good at navigating my own mental spaces. And in those days, I can hold this in my hands. It's actual physical, tangible proof that I am the hero of my own story. It's proof that my rational brain, even though it's not in charge all the time, is in charge of at least some part of my life. And when I look at the journals that I've kept over the years, I can see the number of times that I have set out to make myself a better person. Was I successful in each and every one of those endeavors? No, oftentimes because I expected way too much of myself way too quickly. But for each and every one of those attempts, for each and every one of those journal entries, I have proof that I am making my world a better place. See, journaling isn't just about writing something down. I think at its core, the reason journaling can help us with our mental health is it helps us develop an honestly better relationship with ourselves. It lets you put some part of yourself down on a piece of paper and then interact with it and come to interact with yourself with a different set of emotions than I think we normally allow ourselves. See, often if you're like me and you think about your goals or the things that you want to do or your future, it's often these grandiose visions and these ideas that we can snap our fingers and change everything. I know that's an idea that I've talked about a lot, but when we start to write those things down, we can start seeing ourselves for who we are and start appreciating who that person is. See, at the Heroes Journal, we're a big fan of people with goals because we want to help those people achieve those goals. I'm not going to tell you that by buying this journal, you're going to start $1 million business or lose 100 pounds and run a marathon or write a New York Times best-selling book. But I am willing to make one promise to you, a promise based upon everything I've said about how I use this journal. That if you use this journal, you will begin to see yourself as the hero of your own story. See, the real value of journaling for mental health, at least in my experience and opinion, is that you get to develop a better relationship with yourself. Now, see, in the normal flow of a video, this would be the part where I pitch the Heroes Journal. And I love the Heroes Journal. I have given my own money and a lot of my time to this item I'm holding in my hands, not just the project of the company, but to the actual journal that I use. But today, I don't want to pitch you on visiting our website and buying one of these, though it's certainly an option. I want to pitch you on journaling. I want to pitch you not just on the pieces that went into the journals that we sell, but the act of picking up a pen and a piece of paper and encountering yourself anew. By doing that in some tangible, practical way, you make your world just a little bit less chaotic, just a little bit more ordered. You make the world a little bit more of a trustworthy place. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching that video. My name is Zach with the Heroes Journal. It was a ton of fun to make. I've been journaling for years, both in physical journals, in the Heroes Journal, as well as in my Google Drive, where I try to write every morning. So this was a ton of fun for me to make. I hope it was helpful for you. If you want to learn more about the Heroes Journal, the different pieces that we decided to include to help you with your productivity, to see yourself as the hero of your story, you can visit heroesjournal.co to take a look inside, learn more, and order yours. Finally, we make videos every week talking about goal-setting psychology, the best of story theory, and how they play out in our favorite fandoms. So you can like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.